Hi, I'm Claire Snowden, darling.
I'm Laura Knowles.
And we are the founders of Balanced Wellness and the College of Functional Kinesiology. And we are known for our work with stress and digestion and immune, but also our really deep emotional work. And so what we want to talk to you today about is how do we deal with our really challenging emotions?
And I like that you use the word challenging because I think a lot of people label them as negative.
Oh, yeah.
And we want to really come away from that.
Binary.
Yeah.
There is no good or bad.
Yeah, because all emotions are important. We need to be able to feel them. We need to be able to express them. We need to be able to embrace them. And when we label something negative, then we try and get away from it.
Exactly. It's
in
like
our
it shouldn't be there.
Never want to get away from something.
So, you said it in a really beautiful way once, and I've been rolling out this phrase ever since. You said, we've got this spectrum of human emotions, and it's like, why do we only want to feel the nice ones?
I just want to be happy.
I just want to be happy. And you said, that's like looking at a rainbow and saying, I only want to see the colour blue. It kind of doesn't make sense. All of the emotions, there is beauty in them, there is gold in them. It's just a bit icky to be with some of them. So how do we learn how to not be in the ick or not feel so ick? So there's a couple of things we want to talk about. First of all, one of my favourite things, having been someone who has experienced mental health issues, who, definitely depression. I also was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I've experienced some of the more challenging of the emotions. And and there are days sometimes, I still sometimes struggle. And the first thing that I remind myself is this too shall pass. This too shall pass. The really great days and the really challenging days, because the really challenging days are like, okay, it might be one day, might be 2 days, but this too shall pass.
Like the weather.
Like the weather. And then this also reminds me on the really, really fun, joyous days just to drink it all in, because then we get to be really grateful and present and in it. But the thing that we have come to realise after many years in both our own self-development journeys, but also in clinical practice, is that these challenging emotions are coming from, let's call it, different parts of ourselves, that there are different parts of ourselves, that actually this journey to becoming an adult, there are different phases, aren't there? There's infancy, there's our childhood, there's our teens, then there's adulthood. But actually our subconscious knows no linear time. So whilst I was a child in the 1970s, to my subconscious, at times, it's still the 1970s. So what I mean by that is when something happens to us in life and it triggers us into a feeling that was familiar, and the first time we felt it was, in my case, the 1970s, or in our teens, or, whenever. And in that moment, when we react to what's happened to us, we aren't acting from the place of being autonomous adults. We're not acting from being the person who's got a degree, very prestigious in their work, parent to 3 children. We're not acting as that person. We are acting as the triggered child or the triggered teenager. And the more that I've done this work to grow into my autonomous adult, the more I see how most people, most of the time, are reacting from one of these wounded places.
Yeah. One of the things that, just following on from that, you say recognising that we have these different parts of ourselves, and where anxiety can come up, where fear can come up, is when we completely associate with one part of that. When we say, I am terrified, I am anxious, it's the whole of us are terrified or anxious. But when we can start labelling it, there is a part of me that is anxious, then we can recognise that there is another part of us that is able to look after this anxious side of ourselves. And it can give us the power to be able to respond to that fear when we're fully in that fear, we can't do anything about it. So I really encourage my clients to talk from that different part
this
of themselves.
part of me feels.
Yeah,
This
there's a part of me
feels.
that feels anxious. There is a part of me that is angry. And then to be able to label what part of you is angry, what part of you is anxious.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just this big believer that we have these parts of us alive in every moment. So this 6-year-old child or this 16-year-old teenager, they never go anywhere. They're always within, and they are where we react from. So when we go on this journey, we call this inner child parenting. That's one of the words for it. A lot of different methodologies use something similar, but parenting or inner child work is usually the kind of language around it. And one of the ways that we break it down is when there's fear or tears, it tends to be more the wounded child.
It's because fear is one of the first emotions that we have as a baby. It keeps us safe. It's absolutely a purpose of fear. It's one of the frustrations I have when other therapies look at removing the fear. We absolutely need it. It's our safety. So fear comes from that very...
Well, it's not that we need, because there are actually only two fears that we're born with, which is a fear of falling and a fear of loud noises. And every other fear we create as a construct in our brain. But the difficulty is the more you try and remove a fear, then the brain's just going to create a new one. So the only way to be able to deal with this with any kind of longevity is to be able to support the part of us that keeps on making more and more and more. And then it learns it doesn't need to make more and more and more. So this wounded, as Laura says, from this very young place. And actually the teenager tends to be much more about anger, shame, humiliation. You know, that really awkward teen phase?
Being disrespected.
That feeling of I'm not good enough,
rejection can be very, very teenage.
Yeah. So...
confidence as well.
Confidence, So this would really be important for you if you have anxiety, if you have depression, if you have low confidence, if you're passive aggressive, if you're angry all the time, and you know, like your partner doesn't unload the dishwasher and then you're just like, okay, there's some stuff to look here from this inner child perspective or this inner teenage perspective. And what happens over time is we start to grow up in all the areas of our lives. And I don't mean that in a patronising way, but it never ceases to amaze me. I know I didn't feel like an adult and you didn't feel like an adult. We talk about feeling like a teenage girl or a teenage boy in an adult's body. And so many people feel that way.
Yeah.
They're like waiting to be tapped on the shoulder to go, oh no, you don't really belong here because you're not actually a grown-up yet.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, proper imposter.
Pretending to be an adult here.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating that as we go through this journey, so I'd gone on this journey for a really long time of doing self-parenting work, and it was a meditation that we were doing every single day. So in some of the self-development we've done, it was, you know, something we were supposed to practice every day for a year. And I was like, I'm such a grown-up. I've really got this. And then when I left my ex-husband, I suddenly went, oh my God, I have not been like, I'm not dated since I was in my early 20s. I have never had to grow this part of me up. I'm still operating as a teenager, and like literally like, I feel like a teenager around boys. Like that's how it felt. And I had to do this huge amount of work to help her so lovingly grow up so that I was actually dating as a 43-year-old woman, not as a 17-year-old girl trapped inside this 43-year-old woman's body. And this is actually the journey that we're doing. So when you've got fear or anxiety, what's that 6 or 7-year-old trying to say, and what does she need to be able to just stop being so fearful and anxious? And it's never something external, and it's never getting away from it. It's never a let's just cut out that fear and anxiety. It's what does she need from you to feel safe? What does he need from you to feel safe? That's the work that we do. That's how we get people to feel much more in control of their life, that actually they can handle anything that's thrown at them. This is how we get our comfort zone bigger and bigger and bigger, because the more we can parent ourselves, the less frightening the world is.
Well, yeah, it's the adult who chooses and handles responsibility. And so if there are areas of your life where dealing with responsibility, either in your work or in your family life or at home, is such a trigger and creates anxiety in you, there's the opportunity, there's the route into speaking to that inner child or that inner teenager who is out of their minds frightened or is not coping, and find out what it is that they need to be able to, so that you can step fully into that.
Yeah, because
adult.
then we're in our full potential. Then we're in our full potential. Then we're not avoiding conflict, but we're also not bringing aggression and edges to conflict. We're able to bring compassion. We're able to give ourselves time and space to think. We're able to enter into new situations. Nothing really triggers us anymore.
And it's a really lovely feeling for
it's
someone who does this work on a pretty much a daily basis, to have that confidence in myself that I've got the tools to be able to deal with and process anything that life throws at me. That is such a relief.
Yeah.
It's such a relaxing relief. My adrenals can get off the ceiling.
Yeah, exactly right. It's free. And funnily enough, the thing that I've discovered the most is that the more ability I have to parent myself, the more adult I am able to be, actually the more playful I can be, because it's like having when children know their structure and their boundaries, right, you can go and play but come back at 5 for tea. Then they can just go and be crazy, and they know they've got to be back in at 5 for tea. Somebody's holding the structure, it's safe. So I'm now so much more playful and free and light and funny and all of those things, because I know I've got this. Regardless, in any moment, if something happened, it's fine. I'm on it.
Well, absolutely. If your inner teenager is constantly stressed and worried about something, they're not going to be free.
Or feeling anxious about themselves, or, I don't know if I fit in, I don't know if I'm good enough, I better not say that, I better not say this.
Once you can just drop all of that, then she can absolutely play.
Exactly.
And life becomes more fun.
So much more fun. And when the big crisis happens, we aren't reacting with fear, with panic, with anxiety. We can take a deep breath and we can see clearly what needs to be done. We're able to steer our own ship. So that